Jesus himself, as he said in the 42nd verse of Matthew 24, he didn't know the long-term chronological facts about the second coming. Nobody except the Father knew that. What Jesus did know was the book of Daniel. He knew it very, very well, and so should you if you're a Christian. And Jesus knew that in the book of Daniel, one of the great themes that was to be that there would be trouble, that's putting it mildly, terrible trouble in the temple, followed by his, what we call his second coming, his parousia, his arrival, not presence, but arrival in power and glory at the end of the age. And so they asked a question of Jesus there, and they said, what will be the sign of your coming in the end of the age? Note, they asked that question on the basis of the statement that the temple would be destroyed. They also knew that in Daniel there would be trouble and destruction in the temple, followed by the parousia, and that's why they formed that question that way. Please explain to us when this destruction of the temple will happen, and what will be the sign of your parousia and end of the age. In their mind, and in the mind of Jesus, based on Daniel, there would be trouble in the temple, followed by the second coming. So, if you ask me, is he talking about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, I would answer by saying, as it turns out, that destruction of the temple in 70 AD was not the one that results in the future second coming. They are together. Jesus, I tell you and suggest to you strongly, didn't himself know how many decades, how many millennia might occur before the second coming. So when he says all these buildings will fall down, he certainly meant that. As it turns out, the falling down of the buildings in 70 AD was not the one. And so it implies that there will have to be another temple in the future, and those buildings will be destroyed, followed by the second coming of Jesus. Now, this is a Jewish way of thinking. In the book of Haggai, you'll find that the prophet there speaks of the past temple and the present temple and the new temple, but he calls it this temple. That's a very Hebraic, all-encompassing way of thinking. A temple that might not be there any longer can still be called this temple in the past. It can refer to the temple in the present, and it can also refer to a temple in the future, not yet built. All of that is this temple. That is a corporate way, as they say, of thinking, incorporating temples at any stage chronologically on that site. So I hope I've made this quite clear. The disciples knew, and Jesus knew, that there would be trouble in the temple just before the second coming. So Jesus said, all these buildings are going to fall down. He was absolutely right. As it turns out, that particular fall of the temple in 70 AD was not the event which produced the second coming, which hasn't happened yet. However, Jesus was not wrong. Using a corporate way of thinking, he talked about the temple in front of the buildings they were looking at. They would all fall down, and there will be another temple yet in the future as a final fulfillment of this prophecy. I hope that's clear to you, because commentaries are really puzzled. How did Jesus then apparently make a mistake? He didn't make a mistake. We know that. What he knew was that there would be trouble in the temple, followed by the second coming. The disciples knew that. They asked the question on that basis. And as it turns out, looking back now in retrospect, from our point of view, that AD 70 destruction of the temple, where the Romans burned that temple to the ground, it was awful. That was not the destruction of the temple, which was to be followed immediately by the second coming, which hasn't happened yet.
To follow up here, Anthony, as soon as Jesus says that the temple or the buildings, remember, it wasn't just the temple, there were buildings also around the temple, other structures. So when Jesus says that these things will be destroyed. Yes, you're right. They immediately connect this to the day, what they understand as the day of the Lord.
Yes.
That's how it's known in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew scriptures. They understand that as the end of this present evil age.
Yes.
So they connect those two events of the destruction of the temple. Now, you said they got that information from Daniel.
Yes, absolutely.
You're talking about this passage in Daniel 9:24 onward, if you can shed light on that.
All of the occurrences of the abomination of desolation in Daniel should be put together. But particularly in Daniel 9, there are 70 periods of sevens. Weeks is actually a mistranslation, should be 70 sevens. That's a period of 7 undefined. And from the context, it would have to be 490 years. 70 times 7, 49, and 70 times 7 times 70, 490 years, are decreed, are laid out. A time from the statement which Daniel is quoting there for the rebuilding of the temple in BC times until the Messiah. That's the arrival of Jesus at his first coming. So there would be, it says in 25 there, know therefore and understand, from the time that the word went out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, that's all finished now in the past, until the time of the first coming of the Messiah, the anointed prince, there'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's a total of what? 69 weeks, isn't it? Periods of 7. There would be 483 years. And that temple was built again. It was built again. And it will, in the future, be built again. So what your early statement there was exactly right. In the minds of the disciples, when they hear about the destruction of the temple, they rightly and automatically associate that with the coming of the end of the age. So that question there of theirs is linked grammatically. What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? Notice I left out the article there deliberately. What will be the sign of your parousia and end of the age? They knew, Jesus knew, and had taught them that the end of the age would be associated with the fall of the buildings. That's how we make sense of this passage.